I found out my wife was cheating. Classic. And somehow that still wasn't the worst part. She cried, she apologized, she begged. I forgave her. I had no idea my entire life would be destroyed 6 months later. My name is Daniel, and I'm going to tell you something I've never said out loud to anyone who actually knows me. Not to my brother. Not to the 2 or 3 guys I still call friends. Not even to the therapist I started seeing after everything fell apart. I'm going to tell you because sometimes the only people you can be completely honest with are strangers. And because I think someone watching this needs to hear it. So let me start from the beginning, or at least close to it. Vanessa and I met when I was 26. She was 24. We got married when I was 29. By the time this story starts, we'd been married for 12 years. If you saw us from the outside, and a lot of people did because Vanessa made sure of it, we looked like a success story. Nice house in a quiet suburb, both working good jobs. No financial stress, no kids, which was a decision we kept revisiting without ever fully making. We had a good life. The kind of life where you go to a dinner party and people say, "You two are goals," with genuine sincerity. I believed it for a long time. Here's what I also knew. Even if I didn't think of it as a problem, Vanessa ran things, not in an aggressive way. In a quiet, confident, completely natural way. She was the one who decided where we ate, what vacations we took, which friends we spent time with, which conversations we had at those dinner parties. She had a way of guiding things, guiding me, that felt like leadership, but had a softer name when we were young. We called it her strong personality. I never fought it. I'm not a fighter. I'm the kind of man who would rather let something go than make it into an argument. I thought that was maturity. I thought that was what love looked like, not needing to win every battle. I see it differently now. But back then, I was happy. Or I was comfortable enough that I called it happiness. And sometimes those two things feel identical until they don't. The first sign wasn't obvious. It never is. Vanessa started coming home a little later. Not dramatically later. 20 minutes. 30. And the way she carried herself when she walked in, there was this energy she had, this light, animated thing she did when she talked to her girlfriends or when she was excited about something. I noticed it. I noticed she had that energy sometimes when she came in through the door. And I noticed that energy wasn't for me. I didn't say anything. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then I saw a hotel charge on a credit card statement I probably wasn't supposed to look at. It was a hotel downtown, 45 minutes from our house, on a Tuesday afternoon when she said she was at a client lunch. I didn't confront her. I know that seems strange. Most people would say something immediately, but I went quiet instead. I got still inside. That's what I do when something serious is happening. I go very, very still, and I start watching. Over the next few weeks, I watched everything. The phone that used to sit on the counter face up, now always face down. The way she'd glance at it during dinner and then put it away too casually. The gym bag she started taking more frequently. The perfume that was slightly different on certain evenings. I found a deleted thread in a shared photo app we used. Just fragments, timestamps mostly, but enough to know there was a pattern. Wednesday afternoons, sometimes Friday evenings, always the same rough window. I needed to see it for myself. I know people say you shouldn't do this, that you should confront, communicate, trust the process. But when you've been quietly absorbing things your whole marriage, your instincts about what she'll say and how she'll say it are very finely tuned. I knew that if I said something before I had complete certainty, I would end up the one apologizing. I'd watched that happen before, with smaller things. So one Wednesday I left work early and I sat in my car across the street from a restaurant she had mentioned once, months earlier in passing. She arrived at 6:15. He arrived 3 minutes later. His name, I found out eventually, was Ethan. He was maybe 32, built in that very specific way that comes from taking the gym seriously for years. Easy confidence. The kind of man who laughs loudly and doesn't look around the room to see who noticed. I watched them through the window of a coffee shop across the street. She leaned toward him when she talked. She touched his arm twice in the first 10 minutes. I drove home. I sat in our driveway for a while, then I went inside and made dinner. She came home at 9 and said the client dinner ran long. I said that's fine, and we watched television. I spent the next 10 days figuring out what I wanted to do. I talked to a lawyer quietly, just to understand where I stood, just to know what leaving would look like. I started making a mental list of the financial realities, the house, the accounts, the investments, nothing dramatic, just information. And then Vanessa changed. She noticed something in me. I don't know exactly what. I thought I was hiding it well, but Vanessa has always been more perceptive than I gave her credit for. Maybe it was the way I stopped asking about her evenings. Maybe it was the quality of my silence, the fact that it felt different from my normal quiet. Whatever it was, she picked up on it. She came to me on a Sunday morning. I was having coffee at the kitchen table. She sat down across from me, and for the first time in a long time, she looked small. She said, "I need to tell you something." And then she cried. Real tears. And I want to be careful here because I'm not going to tell you the tears were fake. I'm not sure they were. What I believe now is that she was genuinely frightened. She was losing control of a situation, and that scared her. So the tears were real. The fear was real. The performance was built on top of real emotion, which is what makes it so hard to spot. She told me everything, or most of it. Ethan. How long it had been going on? She said 3 months, which was probably an undercount. She said she felt lonely. She said we had become roommates. She said she missed feeling desired, and instead of talking to me about it, she made the worst possible decision. She said, "I hate myself for what I did to you, to us." She said, "It's over." I ended it. "I need you to know it's completely over." She said, "Please don't let one terrible mistake erase everything good between us." She didn't beg loudly. She didn't throw herself at my feet. She sat across the table, and she was honest and broken, and she looked at me with 12 years of shared life in her eyes. And I want you to understand something. I already knew. I already had the evidence. I had already started talking to a lawyer. On some level, I had already made my decision. But sitting across from the woman I had built my entire adult life with, watching her take responsibility, watching her ask me for another chance, I couldn't hold the exit door open. I just couldn't. I said I needed time to think. She said, "Take all the time you need." 2 weeks later, I told her I forgave her. That was my first real mistake. Not the forgiveness itself. Maybe forgiveness was the right thing. My mistake was forgiving her without understanding who I was forgiving. The 3 months that followed were, genuinely, some of the best months of our marriage. She started therapy. She found a couples counselor, and we went together every Thursday evening. She came home on time. She put her phone on the counter face up. She cooked dinners she knew I liked. She asked how my day was, and she actually listened to the answer. We talked more than we had in years. About the marriage, about what went wrong, about what we both wanted. And it wasn't just the big conversations. It was the small things that got me. The way she'd bring me coffee in the morning without being asked. The way she used to do in our first apartment. The Saturday mornings when she'd turn off her phone and say, "Let's just go somewhere." We drove to the coast once. Sat on a bench and watched the water for an hour without saying much. On the way back, she held my hand over the center console. I remember thinking, maybe this is what it takes. Maybe some marriages need to break before they can actually become something real. I let myself believe that. I wanted to believe it badly enough that I helped it along in my own head. When a small doubt appeared, I reasoned it away. When something felt slightly off, I chose the generous interpretation. I had invested in the idea of recovery, and I wasn't ready to lose that investment. There were evenings where I let myself think, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the version of us that was always there underneath. Maybe it took a disaster to get here. I think that's what hope does to you. When you want something to be true, you start collecting evidence that it is. The financial conversation started slowly. We were in the kitchen one evening doing dishes together, which was itself a new thing, a therapy session thing, and she brought up the house. She said she'd been thinking about refinancing. Interest rates had shifted, there were options worth exploring, our equity had built up nicely. It wasn't suspicious, it was practical. It was the kind of conversation 2 responsible adults in a stable marriage have. "I just want us to be secure," she said. "We went through something hard. I want to make sure we're building something solid going forward." I said I'd look into it. Over the next several weeks, there were a few more conversations like that. A restructuring of some joint investment accounts. Changes to how certain assets were held. She always framed it as simplification. Cleaning things up. Planning for the future. Once, she slid a folder across the table while I was eating and said, "Just whenever you have 10 minutes. I opened it that same evening, skimmed it, and signed where she'd placed the small yellow sticky tabs. 10 minutes, that's what I gave it. My mind was still entirely occupied with the emotional recovery. I was focused on, do I trust her? Is she still talking to him? Is this real or is this performance? The financial stuff felt like background noise. Administrative, adult housekeeping. I didn't look closely enough. I didn't think I needed to. It was the perfume again. That's how I knew. We were getting ready for a work event she had one Friday evening, and when she walked past me in the hallway, I caught a scent that didn't belong to anything in our bathroom cabinet. It was faint. She'd applied it earlier in the day, probably, not expecting me to be close enough to notice. I didn't say anything, but that night while she was in the shower, I looked at her phone. She'd been smarter this time. Everything was cleaner. But there's always something. It was a fitness app, the kind that tracks your routes, and her Wednesday afternoon gym sessions had a route that ended, consistently, at an apartment complex 15 minutes from our house. I knew that apartment complex. I'd done the research before the forgiveness. I knew where Ethan lived. I took a photo of the screen. I put the phone back. I went to bed. I didn't sleep. The next Wednesday, I followed her. Stayed 3 cars back. Watched her pull into the parking garage. Watched her get out. Smooth her jacket. Walk toward the elevator with the kind of ease that comes from doing something many times. She had never stopped. The apology, the therapy, the face-up phone, the home-cooked dinners, all of it had happened while she was still seeing him. She had not made a mistake and corrected it. She had gotten caught and managed the situation. And I had given her the time to do it. I didn't go home that night. I drove to a parking lot and sat there for 2 hours. I want to describe what that feels like because I think it's important. It's not loud. That's the thing people get wrong about grief like this. You don't fall apart, you don't scream, you get very quiet. The way a room goes quiet after a loud noise stops. And in that quiet, everything you thought was real starts to rearrange itself. Every memory gets re-examined. Every kind gesture gets interrogated. Every moment that felt like progress starts to look like strategy. The crying at the kitchen table, the therapy sessions, the face-up phone, the drive to the coast, her hand over the center console. I thought she was healing our marriage. She was buying time. I drove home. She was asleep. The next morning, I called my lawyer. The financial picture that emerged over the next 2 weeks was, to put it plainly, bad. The refinancing had restructured the equity in our house in a way that significantly complicated any dissolution. Certain investment accounts had been transferred into structures that moved faster than I'd realized. There was a home equity line of credit I'd co-signed that now sat against a property I thought of as fundamentally mine. The house had originally come from my family. My father had left it to me. We'd renovated it, expanded it, made it ours over the years, but the foundation of it, literally and emotionally, was his. He'd saved for it his whole working life. There's a specific kind of loss that doesn't have a clean name. When something that belonged to your parents starts slipping out of your hands because of decisions you made while distracted by heartbreak. I sat in my lawyer's office and she walked me through the documents, page by page. I recognized my signature on things I barely remembered signing. The yellow sticky tab pages, the folder slid across the dinner table. 10 minutes I'd given it. My lawyer was good. She was clear with me. She said it wasn't insurmountable. She said I had options. But she also said the picture was considerably more complicated than a standard divorce would have been if we'd separated when I first found out. That sentence landed hard. If I had left when I first found out, before the forgiveness, before the kitchen table tears, before the signed documents, I would have been in a much cleaner position. The forgiveness hadn't just cost me emotionally, it had cost me practically. She'd used it. Not because she'd planned the whole thing from the beginning. I don't think that's what happened. I think she was cheating, got caught, panicked, and then realized the forgiveness had bought her something. She was smart enough to recognize an opportunity. That almost makes it worse somehow. It wasn't a cold, premeditated scheme from day one. It was improvised intelligence. She saw a window, and she walked through it. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday. I laid the financial documents on the kitchen table, the kind of thing she used to do to me. Present the paperwork, let it speak first. She looked at the papers. She looked at me. She was calm. She said, "I was wondering when you'd figure it out." No shock, no panic, not even a performance this time, just a quiet acknowledgement. I asked her if any of it had been real. The apology, the crying, the therapy. She thought about it for a moment, not defensively, almost reflectively, like she was genuinely considering the question. She said, maybe parts of it. I asked her why she'd stayed. Why not just leave when she knew the marriage was over? She said, because people don't walk away from comfort until they know where they're landing. I remember exactly how those words sounded, measured, almost kind, like she was explaining something she'd thought about carefully and had arrived at honestly. She said Daniel was stability. Ethan was excitement. She wanted both until she knew which one would last. She wasn't cruel when she said it. That was the strange part. She wasn't trying to wound me. She was just telling me the truth that had been true for a long time, in the only moment when there was no longer any reason to hide it. She told me she already had a lawyer. Then she went to the bedroom and I heard her making a call. There was no screaming, no plates thrown, no dramatic exit. She left 3 days later with 2 suitcases, and we communicated through our lawyers after that. The divorce took 8 months. The house had to be sold. Between the equity restructuring and the legal costs and the settlement, I came out with a fraction of what I'd expected. The savings were split. The investments were divided in ways that left me with less liquidity than I was prepared for. I lost friends too, or I lost what I thought were friends. Some of them had known Vanessa longer than they'd known me. Some of them just didn't know what to say and disappeared. The social life we'd built together, those dinner parties, those group vacations, the whole comfortable network of other couples, that evaporated almost entirely. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a part of town I would not have considered living in 3 years earlier. I drove a car that was significantly less impressive than the one I'd traded in. I worked my job. I paid my bills. I came home to quiet. For a while, the quiet felt like punishment. There were evenings where I'd sit at my kitchen table, a small one I'd bought secondhand, nothing like the long oak table in the house, and I'd just stare. Not at anything. Not thinking anything useful. Just existing inside the fact of what had happened. I'd open my laptop to distract myself and close it 10 minutes later. I'd start cooking and lose interest halfway through and eat something cold standing over the sink. I stopped keeping track of what day of the week it was for a while. They all felt roughly the same. I'm not saying this to be dramatic. I'm saying it because I think it's important to be honest about what that period actually looks and feels like. Not the cinematic version of rock bottom, but the ordinary, unglamorous version. The one where nobody's watching. The one where nothing happens. Where you're just a man sitting in a rented apartment trying to remember who he was before he handed that identity over a piece at a time. I went back to therapy. I took long drives. I cooked simple meals in a kitchen with no windows. I called my brother more than I had in years. He didn't have the right words, nobody does, but he answered every time. There wasn't a moment where things got better. It was gradual, a receding. She texted me once, several months after the divorce was finalized. Just, I hope you're doing okay. I read it. I thought about it for a minute. I deleted it. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry. I was past anger by then. I deleted it because there was nothing in that message that was for me. It was for her. Some need she had to check a box to feel like she'd done the decent thing at least once, and I didn't owe her the satisfaction of that. Closure isn't a conversation. Closure is when you stop needing one. I'm going to tell you what I actually learned from this. Not the lesson I wanted to learn, which was something about trusting people or reading warning signs or protecting yourself financially, all of which are real and true. But the deeper thing, my whole marriage, I thought I was the mature one. The one who didn't need to win. The one who let things go. The one who kept the peace. What I was actually doing was abandoning myself over and over in small ways I could justify. I let Vanessa make the decisions because conflict made me uncomfortable. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken. I swallowed things I disagreed with. I told myself this was love. What it actually was, at least partially, was avoidance dressed up as virtue. There is a version of being easygoing that is a gift you give a relationship. And there is another version that is a slow surrender of yourself. I'd been doing the second one for years and calling it the first. And when the real crisis came, when she cried at the kitchen table, I forgave her not because I had actually processed what happened and made a conscious choice, but because I couldn't tolerate the discomfort of leaving. Because the version of my life where I stayed was easier to imagine than the version where I had to start over. Because starting over at 41 alone felt like failure in a way I wasn't willing to name yet. She used my loyalty against me, that's true, but I handed it to her. The house I lost, my father's house, the one I still think about sometimes in a way I can't fully describe, that was just the receipt. The bill for 12 years of choosing comfort over clarity, of calling silence wisdom when it was really just fear wearing a better coat. I am not rich now. I am not rebuilding towards some triumphant second chapter. I have a small apartment and a manageable life and some debt I'm slowly working through. I'm not going to tell you I woke up one morning and felt grateful for the pain. I didn't. I don't. Some losses are just losses. And the honest thing is to say so. But something in me is quieter now in a way it wasn't before. Not defeated quiet. Something else. The kind of quiet that comes from not performing anymore. From not pretending a situation is fine when it isn't. From not negotiating with something you already know is wrong because you're afraid of what honesty will cost you. I don't stay in rooms I should leave because leaving is hard. I don't call that maturity anymore. Real peace isn't the absence of conflict. Real peace is refusing to accept what you know is wrong and learning to sit with the discomfort of that refusal. Fake peace, the kind I had for 12 years, is just discomfort postponed. The first betrayal broke my heart. That part of the story everyone understands. The second betrayal, the one that happened after I forgave her, that one introduced me to the part of myself that was willing to stay broken. The part that would rather believe a beautiful lie than face an ugly truth. The part that called weakness patience, and called fear love, and called surrender maturity. And meeting that part of yourself is painful in a way that heartbreak isn't. Heartbreak has a clear cause. This kind of pain is more complicated, because you're partly the cause of it. But it's also the only way to stop being him. If this story reached you somewhere real, leave a comment. I read them. And if you know someone who needed to hear this, share it. Take care of yourselves.